in Medjugorje in front of Our Lady in the back of the church, St. James, and I'm with, what's your name?
Father Doug Grandin
And where are you
from Denver, Colorado.
You told me a bit about your story, which is so beautiful, and I would like to share it with the people on my channel. And you said you started off to be like in a Protestant church when you were 15, is that right?
So I grew up in a disaster of a family with multiple marriages and divorces, sadly. My grandmother was a strong believer, but I first heard the gospel when I was 13, and I embraced it when I was 14 after being challenged to read through the Gospel of Matthew. And a fellow named Dan told me, if you'll read one chapter a week, I'll come to your house, write down your questions, and we'll talk about it. And then in November of 1972, when I was 14, he said, well, you've learned about Jesus, bravo. You've told me that you're lacking in joy, you have guilt over sin. You want freedom from fear of death, and Jesus came to bring all of that for you. And so I prayed my first real prayer and encountered Jesus, and then was baptized, and that was the beginning of my spiritual journey.
And that was you said in the Protestant Free Church kind of?
So I mean, the very first church, I knew nothing about the church, and the fellow who evangelized me took me to his church, and it was a small Pentecostal church. Even in the Protestant understanding, they were off theologically in some ways. But the pastor taught me to love the Bible and taught me to serve others. We had a good youth group there, and it was a good beginning. I say it was sort of the hinterland even of Protestantism. But God took me there, and I began to move. I was then after my sophomore year of high school, I came to communist Yugoslavia and went to language school at the request of a missionary, and was there for 5 years working with churches under communism, and they're supporting churches in the U.S. And then I was ordained for a nice little Protestant denomination called the Evangelical Free Church. They started out as a Scandinavian reform movement on the Lutherans, and then I never met any Catholics who tried to evangelize me or invited me to a Bible study. I never met a Catholic back then who seemed to be concerned about my soul at all, and so I didn't think Catholics were in the whole mission of the gospel at all. So by God's grace, I met a very faithful Anglican bishop. He was one of the last truly evangelical, small c Catholic bishops. He wasn't in communion with the church, but he was very Catholic traditionally and sacramentally. From him I learned about apostolic succession, real presence in the Eucharist, intercession of the saints. And so I became Anglican. I was sent to England. I was just finishing up a doctoral dissertation with the Jesuits, and almost became Catholic in England back in 1998, 99. And then I was ordained for a traditional diocese near Chicago. And then after I was a priest or a minister for 4 years, and it just became very clear to me that I didn't have the authority to celebrate a valid Mass. I couldn't give people in the Episcopal Church, I couldn't give people the body and blood of Christ, because the Anglicans had separated from Rome 500 years before over an idea that the king should be, or a queen, the head of the church.
And divorced, because he wanted to have his will be done.
Without an annulment. So I went to my second bishop, who was a very fine man, and I said, I don't have confidence that I have the authority to celebrate a valid Mass. And he said, you should become Roman Catholic. So I contacted the bishop in Peoria, Illinois, home of Fulton Sheen. Maybe some of your listeners will know Fulton Sheen. And he said he'd be very happy to have me. And he said, I can't offer you a job, I can't offer you anything, you just have to come. And so I came. And that was 2003. And then he explained to me later, after I was in the church, that John Paul II in 1980, Pope John Paul II, the Great created a path where people like me who were ordained as Protestants, specifically Anglicans, and who were married as Protestant ministers, that John Paul II created a path where we could be considered by the Vatican for possible married priesthood. JP2 understood that there was an ancient tradition in the Church to have married and celibate priests. And even today, the Ukrainian Catholic Church, the Byzantine Catholic Church, the Maronite Lebanese Catholic Church, they have both married and celibate priests. He understood that. So he created this path, and so the Vatican vetted me. We had to create a dossier of my educational and ministry experience and a letter from my wife saying if I was able to become a Catholic priest, she'd be very happy to have a Catholic priest as a husband. My moral life. And then the Vatican gave thumbs up to further training. And 2008, the Vatican allowed my bishop, Dan Jenke, a very fine man, to ordain me. And Pope Benedict signed off on that.
Did you go against the seminary? How was the process?
So what they do, I already had a PhD from the Jesuits. That may be good or not so good, you know. I jokingly say that I would have become Catholic sooner if I wouldn't have had to work through the unfaithfulness of the theology department at the university where I was. There are great Jesuits and there are not so great Jesuits, but I had to work through that. So what they do with us is after we're vetted, the Vatican gives us thumbs up to our education, moral life experience. Then they examine us at a seminary. It was in Newark, New Jersey, Seton Hall, their seminary. And we have exams on 7 or 8 different subjects with different professors. And then they determine what special work we need. All of us have a book list where over the next year we have to read a book, just about a book a week in these different areas. Because I had a PhD already, I was very good. I didn't need additional work other than the reading, except in canon law. I had special help from a canon lawyer to learn canon law because we don't know anything about that. So I'm grateful that my bishop sponsored me to the Vatican. The Vatican responded, yes, thank you, Pope Benedict, for that. And I'm happily now a married Catholic priest in the Archdiocese of Denver, Colorado.
How beautiful is that? And is this the first time for you in Medjugorje?
It's the third. I was here shortly after I was ordained, so it was 2008, 2009. An attorney who was real keen on Medjugorje and knew that I had lived in communist Yugoslavia for 5 years. He said he wanted me to see this, and so I came over in 2008 or 2009 and spent a week or so with him. And then I was here again. I did a Croatian, I did a pilgrimage for some of my parishioners in Denver to Croatia. And we visited many Catholic sites starting in Zagreb, and we came here. So twice, this is my third time. I'm here with a group of young people from Focus, the Fellowship of Catholic University students. We now have some teams. We send trained missionaries, recent university graduates, to over 180 universities. We have over 800 missionaries. We form them into teams. And we have teams now in, I think, 6 different places in Europe. Austria, Germany, UK, Ireland, multiple places in Germany and Austria. And so they're trying to reignite the fire of faith in Europe.
How beautiful is that? And you can draw from your experience in the Protestant church because they do this mission work, no? Very strong.
Right. I remember when my first year in the church, one of the problem with pastor converts is you don't know what you're going to do. It's really a faith effort. You have to step out and embrace the church and be embraced by the church. And then you just have to trust that God's going to open a door because you're you're a layman now, you're not clergy. So my first job in the church, in 2003, a benefactor came to me and said, we have a pretty weak bishop in our diocese, and we have one Catholic high school, and it's horribly unfaithful, but we're trying to reform it without his help. And he said, I know you believe the Catholic faith, you have experience, to what you said earlier, in evangelizing and teaching Scripture. He said, I know you believe the Catechism. If I came up with the money, would you be the head of the theology department and try to make it faithful? So I did that for a year. I remember saying to him, I've only been in the church 2 weeks. This seems kind of odd to me. He said, but I know you believe, and we want a believer who has experience. So I did that my first year in the church, and then in the spring of that year, my bishop in Peoria, Illinois, called my wife and me to his office. I was living in his diocese and driving across the Mississippi River to the other diocese, the weak diocese. My bishop said to me, God told me that you're to be my director of Catechetics. And I said, what does that do? And he said, oh, you're in charge of faith formation, Scripture study in all of our, 180 parishes. And I said, this seems crazy. I've only been in the church for 8 months. And he said, Doug, you don't understand how bad it is with us right now in the Catholic Church. He said, in our diocese, we've lost at least 2 generations because we haven't evangelized them. We haven't catechized them. And you know how to do that, and you believe the Catholic faith. And so much of what I've done the last 18 years is partly because I was trained to do evangelization, trained to preach, trained to teach Scripture.
In the Protestant church?
Yeah, and for example, in our seminary, our marvelous rector, now sadly departed, he had brain cancer, but a marvelous...
The seminary of the Protestant church?
Seminary in the Catholic Church in Denver, St. John Vianney.
Yeah.
I had come to we think the best archbishop in the country, retired now, Chaput, in Denver. He hired my wife to be his Respect Life director because she had founded the office in Peoria and started a pregnancy center. And he wanted her, so he hired her. We moved to Denver, which is in the west, beautiful Rocky Mountains. We moved out there, and I was assigned to a parish. And then I was only there for a few months, and the rector of the seminary came to me and he said, people told me you preach well, you communicate Scripture well. And I came in my street clothes so you wouldn't know me, and I listened, and yes, you were able to communicate the gospel with practical application well. And we have great difficulty in the Catholic Church finding homiletics professors that can do that, because we've kind of lost the tradition of communicating by our homilies. Would you teach in the seminary homiletics? And I said, I've never done that before. In my scholarly area is historical theology, with a specialty on the 16th century. But I said, if you will, if you give me a year to figure it out, I'll try. And so I had a good run of 5 years there. So the Protestants lack so much.
What do they lack in your opinion?
You hear people who know Protestants well in the church, even at upper levels of leadership. They'll say, we often say outside the church there's no salvation, but at Vatican II the church also said that those who have placed their faith in Jesus Christ and are endeavoring by grace to follow his teaching, Vatican II said they're brothers and sisters in Christ, they're fellow members of the body of Christ, they'll share eternal life with us. Thank God for purgatory, right, to sort things out. So they have that, and we acknowledge that, and often they're more passionate about proclaiming the gospel and winning converts and energetically preaching Scripture and applying it. But what they lack, there are several things, as wonderful as they are. I always say, if I would have died before I became Catholic in my sincere commitment to Jesus Christ as my Savior and trying my best to follow his teaching, I would have had eternal life. But what I lacked is, first of all, succession of apostolic authority down through the centuries, leading to our bishops today.
Meaning, to explain that means like Jesus laid hand on the apostles and they laid hand on the future generation of
Right, and Protestants believe,
going all the way down to now, no?
Right, Protestants believe that there's a succession, but it's of the gospel proclamation, the kerygma, faithfulness to Scripture. But we can see that hasn't worked very well for them, because they don't, even as sincere and wonderful as they are, they don't have the ability to keep the church from continually breaking up and fragmenting. We need not only bishops who have been given apostolic authority, the truth, of course, but also apostolic authority. We need not only bishops to have that, but the Orthodox churches, as wonderful as they are, demonstrate to us that if you don't have the unifying office of the papacy, you're going to end up being broken up into different national churches that right now, the largest of them, the Russian church, won't even pray for the Patriarch of Constantinople. You have all these kind of divisions, and because they're divided, the Orthodox, they always end up under the thumb of the communists or the tsars, the kings, whatever. So God gave us, in our bishops who have apostolic authority, a magisterium, as we call it, that preserves truth over time. After all, the Bible we didn't have a New Testament canon until around the year 400. There had to be flesh and blood people who had received authority to say, no, Jesus never said that. We don't have that in our writings. And they were the ones. And still today, it's not enough just to have a Bible, because there's 1,001 different interpretations of the Bible. And so they lack that apostolic authority, and that apostolic authority also enables a bishop to lay his hands on a priest so that priest can teach with authority, but also celebrate sacraments. You can't just decide that I'm going to be a minister, decide that I'm going to be a priest, and create a church, and have authority to teach and preach, and authority to give people the Eucharist. You have to share in the unity of the church by way of bishops who keep the church together and pass on their authority. So when I became an Anglican, I learned about those things, and I was an Anglican minister for 5 years, and Catholics who came to my funerals and weddings would have thought they were in the Catholic Church, because we wore the same vestments, we had the same sacred vessels, our liturgy was almost exactly the same. And yet, because a bishop in apostolic succession, in communion with the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, had not laid his hands on me, I concluded, rightly, that I almost certainly didn't have authority to celebrate a valid Mass. I went to my second bishop and I said, I think it's quite likely that I'm just giving people bread and wine, that I don't have authority to confect a valid Mass with the body and blood of Christ. And he said, if you really believe that, then you should become Roman Catholic. And so I did. I'm grateful for that.
And how, now you're here in Medjugorje, how would you explain to a Protestant, what is Mary about?
Yeah.
What's the role of Mary? What do you feel in Medjugorje as a former Protestant? That's for me the most amazing thing to talk somebody.
You know, my wife, who's much more saintly than I am, and I live in her shadow, she's much more fruitful than I am. She was 5 years behind me in my journey. So in Oxford, I told her, I think we need to become Catholic, and she was scandalized. And most Protestant ministers, when they sort out the theology, they get to the point like, I could go on forever. And the church is right on the big things. I just need to surrender to the church, right? But then you still have to count the cost. The cost can be huge. So I was continuing to count the cost, and so 5 years later, when I came to my wife and I said I'm ready, she said I'm ready too, because she was in medicine, and she said the church is the Catholic Church is the sanctity of marriage church. The Catholic Church is the sanctity of life church. The Catholic Church unites faith and reason like no one else. But as she was still wrestling with these things, Mary was the big thing. Mary was the big thing, and then she realized, as I realized, that Catholics don't actually worship Mary. They honor her with the highest of veneration, because the Bible says she was full of grace. If she would not have said to the angel Gabriel her fiat, her yes, she was the gateway for Jesus into the world through her womb. And so we honor her as the best of all the disciples. And so in many ways, when Jesus on the cross, of course, says to St. John, behold your mother, Mary, behold your son, we believe that Mary is our mother. She's our greatest intercessor, even as we pray for one another. We have saints who are alive, who in heaven, who pray for us, Mary chief among them. So Catholics believe just simply that Mary is our greatest example, our greatest mediator, our mother in a significant way, and that, as strange as it sounds, that she has even appeared and given messages at different times in different places. Medjugorje is a little different than Lourdes and Fatima in that the church is still evaluating. But it's an honor to be here because because this is such a holy place. That where else do you have masses through the day with people from all around the world? We're sitting outside of this outdoor Marian chapel where thousands and thousands and thousands of people come for Eucharistic adoration and prayer, and there's confession offered, and wherever you have all of that activity centered upon Jesus Christ. And the Blessed Virgin Mary always points us to her Son. She's not the Redeemer. She's not the Savior. Like a good evangelist, she points us to her Son. Wherever you have all these things centered upon God through Jesus Christ, there's going to be conversion, healing, deliverance, vocations to the priesthood and religious life. Lives are going to be transformed, and that's why it's a privilege to be here.
Thank you so much for that beautiful interview.